Today is January 19th, 2026. In 2026, all right? It is 3:32 in the afternoon, all right? And I want to have a talk about a build up and lead up to current day events, all right? Yesterday was the new moon. I had a really weird day, all right? Like most of the day, I was asleep, all right? Like when I had went to sleep the night before, I was in a dream that wasn't mine. And I was not the one who brought myself to that dream. All right? Somebody else brought me to their dream. All right? So I knew the rules. I remembered the rules. Keep in mind, a little frustrated because, ultimately, when being brought into somebody else's dream, I'm being deprived of my own. All right? So, not to mention that, but when literally trying to use all my force of will to exit because of feeling intrusive, proximity field. Got to see where the boundaries limitations where they're at so far, kind of how far their capabilities are able to reach. All right. Not denying in their own right they are powerful as fuck. All right. And the factor of them being able to do that, I'm not sure if it was their first time of being able to do that or if it was their first time consciously doing that. That part I don't know. But that was an experience in itself because I'm so used to just. I'm so used to my own dreams that when being brought to somebody else's, it is just, oh. And it's just an eye opener of how different people's individual perspective is, even to the point of it affecting their subconscious psyche. All right? Like, it really does end up going ahead and explaining about individual perspectives. And ultimately, what ends up going ahead and shaping somebody's beliefs, somebody's worldview, somebody's even process of reasoning for what they observe, whether rationalizing or internalizing. All right. But it made me think of the buildup of me going ahead and just being open of like, yeah, I'm able to do some pretty weird shit. I've always been able to do some pretty weird shit, but after the coma, that pretty weird shit turned into really weird shit. Like, we're talking really weird to the point of it being obvious to the external world. All right? So, some of the examples of that. All right? Quite literally, there was one time that I was going ahead and talking about civil rights law and ultimately what, you know, civil liberties of mine have been oppressed and the you can't do that legally. We're not even talking about universal law. We're talking about law in the United States, whether it be at a state or a federal level. And literally, no rain or anything. Lightning. Lightning just literally just flashed, and I wasn't even timing it out or looking because, it wasn't raining. There was no thunder at that point or anything. So for the vector of lightning to strike so close and just light up the bricks, that were on the wall that the camera was facing towards while I'm going on my tangent. Just one example. Yesterday was another example because There was not snow predicted, although, let's be real, cold winds plus drizzle equals snow, raindrops, getting carried up and down, up and down, up and down, to go ahead and little by little cause the freezing process that turns them into snowflakes. All right? So, I go ahead and tell about, you know, I'm guessing I ended up doing some cord cuttings for myself that I didn't even realize I was doing. All right? And when I go ahead and I light up my incense, go ahead and, set up a area of protection, all of a sudden it starts snowing. All right? A little bit of snow. All right? And keep in mind, it didn't snow for long. Quite literally, it started snowing at the point that I started making that video, going ahead and explaining the experiences that I've had within the past few days that have even taken me off guard, Because it's one of those, you weren't planning things to, be taken care of and resolved in such a manner, but here you are. Here they are. Tell me how the snow ends up going ahead, and after, going ahead and cleansing with the incense, after finishing the video, 10 minutes later, the snow stops and it doesn't come back. So it was literally just the period of time that I was making that video that it was snowing. Natural occurrences happening in unnatural timing, coincidentally with specific issues getting addressed. It's starting to become a pattern. Explainable? No. Not logically. Coincidence? No, it's seeming like these type of coincidences are becoming habitual. I don't know if anybody else is able to do that or have that, because it's one of two things. Either my energy channels going ahead and attracting said natural occurrences, including the animal magnetism factor, or a level of intuition that has me unconsciously, unknowingly, unintentionally feeling the right time, the right place, and the right way to be able to have evidence of said occurrences, while simultaneously the witnesses of said occurrences are the very surveillance cameras as well as neighbors that are constantly monitoring, despite the factor that the intentions of their monitoring was to either be nosy or for intentions of incrimination, to getting to realize, holy hell, what we are thinking we're seeing, or what we were thinking was going on, something entirely different is going on, but something entirely different that is going on is something that defies logical reasoning. Can I help it? No. When I end up going ahead and reading people, like reading people, and I'm not talking about reading their body language. I'm not talking about, you know, reading the portrayal of what people want to be portrayed of them, you know? The attempt of manipulating others' perception. But I'm talking about reading that internal monologue, reading that essence of a person, reading the things that don't end up going ahead and getting said out loud. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of times that people will go ahead and they'll deny and be like, no, 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 you're not possible. And then later on they'll be like, yeah, actually you were spot on. I was just not wanting to come to the reality that in some way or another that there was something capable of being able to see the real me. Good, bad, and ugly. You know? Or not wanting to come to acceptance of those bad and ugly factors that every individual has. It doesn't matter how holier than thou you want to think you are. We all have our flaws. You know? The difference is how much damage we allow them to do to our general surrounding. And when I say general surrounding, I'm not talking about, property damage or anything. I'm talking about psychological or emotional damage onto others. All right? And sometimes the psychological and emotional damage to others is simply not ending up being who we wanted to believe somebody to be as far as the negative aspects of someone, because of feeling a need of feeling superiority, or a need to compare and contrast. So, that being said, for anyone thinking, oh, it's a mental breakdown or a nervous breakdown, no. In that case, my existence has been one giant nervous breakdown. But at this point, with the amount of people externally capable of being able to see it, they would have to go ahead and do a little bit of soul searching on themselves of like, hey, if you want to think that person's crazy, but you're seeing exactly what they're pointing out also, and the occurrences that end up happening that didn't end up happening when their presence was not a variable in said environment, then ultimately you're crazy too. That means this is a shared delusion. Which then ends up going ahead and triggering a level of self reflection that tends to be pretty uncomfortable for people who thought they, quote unquote, had it all together. That's honestly, I can't think of a better example of what people call an uncomfortable truth. Right? Those uncomfortable truths end up going ahead and translating into constructive criticism of self, because it's saying, hey, there's a kink in the armor there. Ultimately, the right targeting, the right precision, right to that spot, and it doesn't matter how impenetrable you thought that armor was, they could get the kill shot. When I say kill shot, I'm not talking about, legitimately killing somebody. I'm talking about, the as people keep calling it, the ego death. You know, the kill shot of pride, the kill shot of ego, the you know knocking someone off their high horse, or knocking them off their pedestal. That being said, I just felt the need to share this because at this point, I'm done hiding from the self acceptance of, so this is my life now. I'm done hiding from, that criticism thought that ends up going ahead and getting driven by people that want to fear what they don't understand but aren't willing to understand it because it ends up contradicting everything that they were taught to believe. All right? And just being like, listen, I am definitively at this point a freak of nature. But at the same time, I would rather be a self accepting freak of nature that, ends up going ahead and celebrating the differences, rather than automatically wanting to demonize what should not be realistically possible. And that level of acceptance, self acceptance, comes along with a lot of breaking down to separate what ended up being compartmentalized as far as what I was taught that I should believe because it's just the way it's always been, in comparison to believing what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing, and understanding that my experience and other people's experience are very different things. And there are things about me and my personal experience that ends up going ahead and separating me from the rest, and not in an arrogant way of like, I'm not like other I'm not like other guys. I'm not like, not that. Legitimately like, yeah, no, I am not like other human beings. I am not like other creatures on this planet. I am solely unique, one of a kind. I'd like to believe that there are other people like me. There are other people capable of doing the things that I'm capable of doing. Or at least having a understanding of what I'm able to do. While at the same time, having a deep enough level of self awareness as well as awareness that they could just be like, no, all right. A lot of directions we could take this. I mean, which way you want to go? Don't know if I'm going to stick around for it. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know. But ultimately, just got to see when we get there. What else can you do? You know? And just letting things unfold naturally. Funny thing is, it sounds like such a simplistic task. But the amount of people that I have met incapable of such a simplistic task ends up going ahead and letting me know exactly the depth and difference of lived experience that they've lived in comparison to my lived experience. And ultimately, how long or how far down the road that our paths intertwine. You know? The whole some people are in your life for a season, some people are in your life for a reason type situation. While also accepting that when it changes from somebody being in your life for a reason in comparison to being in your life for a season because The reason that they were in your life was for an elongated season, but change from a reason to a season, and recognizing when that season's end has come to its, foregone conclusion, due to the factor that ultimately at some point or another, you know, the enmeshment ends up going ahead and either being detrimental, problematic, or ends up going ahead and preventing one of either individuals from being able to go ahead and grow and reach the heights that they'd be capable of if they were able to go ahead and just embrace their own way, you know? And if those ways end up going ahead and different, being differential in, belief system or in execution of belief system, then you know what? It doesn't have to mean war. It doesn't have to mean conflict. It doesn't have to mean, demonize what you don't understand. It could quite literally be like, well, that served its purpose for the purpose that it was meant to serve. But that purpose no longer serves the trajectory in which life and, the very change in perception based on the introduction of new evidence would end up going ahead and having me believe is for my, for my best, for my highest good. The capability of being able to recognize that, analyze it, and process it, accept it, recognize that alone is a change in the amount of people that end up going ahead and fearing change, which ends up going ahead and causing the stagnancy that could have otherwise been avoided, should they had accepted, hey, some things are out of my hands. Some things are meant to happen. If what's meant to happen to me ends up going ahead and being perceived like a Charlotte's Web scenario with the elements, okay. I guess I'm meant to be part of the sideshow. Or maybe the sideshow is meant to go on the main stage. It's just one of those understanding differences of happening to you or happening for you. It just really processing the levity and the gravity. And I understand those are two opposing factors. Levity being lightness, gravity, density, weighed down. Understanding both and the nuances between the both. And the way that ignoring the trajectory that understanding the both ends up going ahead and leading, and the detriments that it could end up having, while simultaneously too understanding the damage that inaction or indecision could end up going ahead and causing when things do end up going ahead and occurring in a natural way, that you just gotta roll with the punches. Even if those punches end up seeming like the universe going ahead and aiming a fucking sniper at the entire planet. I'm just saying, look up live science. There is a lot going on in space. A lot. Like a lot. Like, a lot of things that had never been seen to be happening in human experience to now seeming live action, the expansion of existence as a whole. Just a lot to process. Well, at the same time, regardless of how much or how little it would end up being to process based on how minded you are, the one thing it does not change, regardless of how well or how badly you end up processing it, it doesn't change that it's happening.